Hi, welcome to the Whitey White Guy Show. I'm Whitey, and today I'm a review of a film called Spawn, which came out in 1997, and it's the 1990s, the late 90s. Computer graphics were just coming through; they were in their infancy, and Spawn is a film that's based on a comic book, very popular comic book, and this was an area of time where we're getting away from practicals into more computer graphics. And Spawn was a film that came out just a few years too early and tried to be at the cutting edge and kind of instead did it failed horrifyingly. I don't know. It's not a film that I don't think a lot of people hate as much as acknowledge didn't quite work. And that's unfortunate because Michael J. White plays the Spawn character. He plays the lead. You've got Martin Sheen as one of the villains. You've got John Leguizamo as an angel, or I'm sorry, demon from hell in a clown outfit. You've got D.B. Sweeney, who gives a solid performance here. You got a solid cast giving a good performance. The more practical elements, where the director clearly had more experience, works pretty well. Some of the visuals. Spawn is a superhero. He's got a big old cape, and it was hit and miss. But when it missed, it missed pretty hard on some of the effects and whatnot. And so the idea is here that I forget exactly what the guy is supposed to be. The main guy, played by Michael J. White, is he's like in the FBI. Has been like the CIA. He works for the government. He's an assassin for the government of sorts, and he's married. He's got a kid back home. And then he's working most directly under Martin Sheen's character, who is, unbeknownst to him, is like a villain who's made a deal with the devil, and or more specifically, John Leguizamo, who's a demon from hell. And then when Spawn gets double crossed and ends up getting killed on a mission, he goes down to hell, where he's angry at all that's happened to him, and he makes a pact with the devil to come back and do the devil's bidding, more specifically under the guidance of John Leguizamo, is leading the show. So there's a lot of who's really behind it. How much is the devil on top of this thing, and is it more John Leguizamo playing his own angles? And then the same thing with Martin Sheen's characters. Martin Sheen is working at John Leguizamo's character's behest. I forget all their names. I'm sorry. And so there's cross and a double cross and all this stuff. And at one point, Martin Sheen's the clear bad guy. But then at another point, it's like you could tell he's being pushed by John Leguizamo to go beyond what he might have normally done. And so there's a lot of who's behind things. And so Spawn comes back from hell. His face is all messed up and burnt up from hell. And nobody recognizes him. He looks like a ghoul. He ends up, living in the shadows, living in the dark. And then Angel, I guess, played by some old British guy who I've never seen before, don't know. Kind of gets him under his tutelage to fight for good and for the betterment of the world, I guess. And then basically Spawn is going to go toe to toe with the bad guys. And then his dog is the only one who recognizes him. D.B. Sweeney works for the bad guys but doesn't realize it. He's also Spawn's buddy when he was alive. And years have passed, he's now married Spawn's wife. And Spawn has mixed feelings about this. He's like, you married my wife, but then of course he's been dead for a while, so it's like, eh. So there's a lot going on there, and it really is this film any good? It could be. Had they said, let's wait a few years and hit this thing when the tech is there a little bit better, let's do that. Like if they were to make it now, it's an interesting enough story. If they, the cast is older, but cast it right, could be an interesting story. It largely fails because the computer graphics and stuff, the effects, don't always work in key moments. So it's like Michael J. White is like, you took me to hell, now I'm gonna make you pay, and he does a spinny thing with the cape and it doesn't work. You're like, oh damn. And at the end fight, when the actual devil shows up in Homie's living room, and he goes from this big, huge thing to he can fit in that living room, and you're like, "Ooh, that doesn't work." But John Leguizamo, he plays this little fat dude in a clown suit, and he's creepy. He's all get out. He does this right solid balance of being comedic at times, but creepy at other moments. I thought his performance was good there. Um, he did what he needed to do. Michael J. White's a very talented actor. D.B. Sweeney's a good actor. Martin Sheen, of course. Um, but that's all that can really be said about this film is the effects didn't work. There's one, and then it's a Hollywood movie that bought the property for Spawn, and we're going to make a live action hour and a half long film on this. And they grabbed some kind of the cool stuff and the visual effects and threw it in there that worked in a comic book and made sense in a comic book, but don't work well on the screen. So at one point, Spawn, his cape and his outfit can do different things, and he's still trying to figure that out. So at one point, he's up here on like the fourth floor on the side of a building, and all the cops are shooting at him because there's been a shoot 'em up. And then he does a thing where his cape blends him into the background, and then 5 seconds later, he comes out of that, and they're shooting at him again. And I'm like, what did that accomplish? It bought you a few seconds. They couldn't see you, but what did that accomplish? That should have helped you get away, and it didn't. And it was just like, why? So it's clearly like we've only got so much time in a comic book film, or you can only invest so much time here before you lose the audience. We got to throw this effect in there just because we have this effect. We figured out how to do this with a computer, but it makes no goddamn sense, and it doesn't aid the story in any way. So it was one of those. Hollywood was still getting a feel for how to take a comic book film, turn it into an hour and a half long film. You got your origin story, you got your villains, and it just didn't all fall together very well. There's some cool parts. Understand me, there's some good visuals, some good story concepts, and then sadly, of course, comic books, so much of them very similar themes. And so the film, I am not connoisseur at all about Spawn. I don't think I've ever read a Spawn comic. But if it's successful, there's bound to be elements of the story that separate it from other comic book heroes, and the film made it very generic, and we've seen it all 100 times. So of course, he can't just be a guy. He's got to have that wife and that kid, and he's a killer assassin guy or whatever he does for the government. He's a mercenary or something, but of course he's with a heart of gold. He thinks he's defending his country. Turns out he's killing people because some crooked dealings. If someone's going to sign and then environmental friendliness was a big time, someone's going to sell a weapon, a bioweapon, and, it's the same themes that everybody was extrapolating from these comic book movies, and you've seen it before. So it suffered from that. It's pretty generic, and there was nothing that really separated. So with that, if you're gonna have a successful film, you got to have good effects, yo. Strike two. So pretty generic story. The effects didn't crush. The thing that there's some redeeming out. The performances weren't awful, but the thing that could have saved it was somebody somewhere gave a Heath Ledger-esque, Joker, Dark Knight performance, and while the performances weren't bad, the film lacked that. Strike three. So the movie Spawn from 1997, it's not the worst thing you've ever seen. If you've never seen this film before, I would say go check it out. Munch some popcorn, get yourself some snacks. You're going to be like, hey, that looked pretty good. And then, oh my God, that looked awful. Oh, that was bad. But it's still not the worst. It's far from the worst thing I've ever seen. although some of the effects were really pretty awful. The story as a whole, the performances keep this bearable. And some of the practical stuff, fine. It was just the effects. They just didn't have that. And that was clearly what they were going for. So I can only say so many times the effects didn't work, but the effects didn't work. So that's my 2 cents on Spawn. If you haven't seen it before, check it out. John Leguizamo's fun. He's creepy as shit. That, for what he was supposed to be doing, that worked. He creeped me out, man. John Leguizamo did a good job. I'm a DB Sweeney fan. He kind of gives a generic performance, but it certainly isn't bad. Michael J. White, I'm a big fan of. There's some good acting here, but there's like scenes where he's in hell, and it looks like something out of an early video game, like an early 90s video game. So even for 97, some of this looked dated as crap. Looked like something out of Mortal Kombat, which is the same thing everybody will tell you because it did. And then Michael J. White's like, "You will not control me," and you're just like, "Oh, he's trying to act. Oh, and he's trying to act. Not that he's a bad actor. He's trying his level best to get good performance. Clearly up against a green screen. He doesn't know what's around him, and it just didn't work. So the good performances that are, Martin Sheen does a fine job as a villain, and an era where he really wasn't known for being a villain. So he's like, I'm gonna go take a villain role to keep my career relevant, do all this stuff, and he picked the wrong one. But it's not a bad performance. He's not all. He's a little bit comic booky, you might say, but he's in a comic book movie. So this was pre Christopher Nolan's Batman, where the Batman Begins, where all the elements came in together and everything worked great. And they just crushed it, and they knew exactly how to make a comic book film. This was where they were still figuring out what that is. What is a comic book movie? A full-length movie? Are we taking this seriously? Are we doing it comic book-y, like Tim Burton's Batman or Christopher Nolan's Batman? Which end of the spectrum are we aiming for here? And they tried to shoot down the middle and they missed everything. So go watch Spawn and know my pain. But I don't hate it. It's just like, oh, it didn't work. Oh, but I'm not a Spawn fan. I was aware of the comics, but I wasn't a fan. I'd hate to be a Spawn fan, and it'd be interesting to know what Spawn fan thought of this film. So, comment in the comment section. Let me know what's going on. Watch this again and take a shot every time I say the effects didn't work, and see if it kills you or not, and let me know. White White Guys Show. Thank you for watching. I'm working on reconstructing my room. Not that it's ever clean in my videos, but thank you for watching again. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.